Val, what's happening? I'm in
Going on?
Calgary, so I'm not in my typical podcast room, but I'm excited to do this podcast. And I know I haven't heard this update. So you just finished your Coach 2 certification. So for everyone listening, Val is even more certified to train all levels, including the higher levels. And so I thought it'd be a good way because I like, not paying for these certifications than hearing from Val what he
It just
learns, what he learns.
it just means I can know more and say more, but I still can't do it myself.
So why you tell me and everyone listening what you learn that can help that we can apply to our games?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's so yeah, as you said, I got my coach too, which is awesome. I've been working on it for about a year. So it's been a little bit of a journey. I'd say yeah, three. I'd say top three things I've learned. Number one is the importance of decision making. I find that a lot of, at least for myself, but for a lot of players, we work on we work on technique, we work on stroke development. How do we just develop our strokes, our technique? How do we become better? But what is lacking for a lot of players, and myself included, is the decision making aspect of things. Is how do we make the fastest, most appropriate decision in the moment? And so a lot of the coach too focused as a coach focused on developing that. How do we see the court? How do we view our players and what they're doing? And how do we train the gray area so that they can make the right decision as quickly as possible? So that's definitely something that as players get better, something I recommend people work on. The second thing I'd say for me, takeaways, a long-term, short-term development plan. A lot of players kind of, you know, they just go play tournaments. I mean, obviously it's a little bit different for juniors because juniors do have, hopefully with their coaches, have a lot of development plans. But for adults, if you're looking to play tournaments where there's 3-0s, 4-0s, 5-0s, opens, have a plan. Have a short-term plan of things you want to achieve, and then have a long-term plan, and then stick to it. I think just lack of having a plan, and just not having a GPS, not having a sort of a route or a map to get there. That was a big thing for me. And then third thing is, so the coach too focuses on national level U12s, U14s, and the biggest thing I think for me was really a shock factor was as players get better, it doesn't mean more. It just means more of the same. It means more, potentially more accuracy, more consistency. But you'd think as players get better, you're looking for something new, something extraordinary, but it's the same tactics. It's the same take time away. It's the same buy time. It's sort of at the very base of it, at the root of it, it's the same tactics. It's just now, hey, can we hit the same ball over the net a little faster, a little quicker? Can we get in position a little faster than before? Really, I was telling you, Grant, earlier, over the break, I was in Toronto, and I had the pleasure of being on court with 3 low-level ATP players, and it was a treat. Really, great players, really fast, just the footwork, the court coverage. But as I'm listening to Alistair, who's the coach there, I'm listening to him give feedback. It's the same stuff that I'd be giving feedback to a 3-0 player, receiving the ball, obviously at a different level, a different pace, but at the core, it just comes back to hit the ball, right timing, over the net, make a mistake. That's it.
Okay, so we're going to use this podcast to help me get ready for my ITF tournament in 5 weeks. And so on that topic, you said short-term plan. So I need at least a short-term plan. And my long-term plan, okay, so everyone listening, cheer me on, help me out, is one, I got my first tournament of the year, February 10th, 13th, and then nationals at the end of the summer in August. So long-term plan, my goal is to win nationals, singles and doubles. Short-term plan, win this first ITF, which is a lower level in Calgary. And so now I need to get ready for it. So did you learn anything about, okay, the short-term plan, like what are some of the building blocks for tournament preparation when you're 4 weeks out? How many weeks out should you be thinking about like tournament prep?
Well, great question. So that's the thing. So basically, there's obviously different seasons, and I'd be happy to send you. I actually have a plan I can send you. There's actually a player his name is Josh, who's currently trying to go pro. He's playing futures, he's playing challengers. I can send you a copy of a plan
Oh,
that will
sweet.
help you. When you're in competition, again, it's a difference of like how intense are your exercises on and off the court, right? So when you're in competition, you want to be very intense, your intensity is high. For you, obviously, you're a developed player. I'd say mental and visual, just the visualization of it, of envisioning the players. Tactical is huge for you. You're not going to be changing before the tournament. You said what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks away? 5 weeks. Sorry, 5 weeks. You're not going to be changing. I wouldn't suggest changing a lot of your technique just because you're so close to the tournament season now. So right now you're looking for rhythm, looking for grooving your strokes, potentially maybe tweaking a little bit, but really you're just looking for rhythm. You're looking for the mental prep and the visualization, making sure that you're ready up in here.
Okay. And then the other thing that you said, which like I don't think about that much. I should think about it. I know this guy Paul Ratchford is amazing at buying time.
Mm.
That like take time away is like almost like the first thing that people think about because it's like, oh, you learn to volley, you learn to serve and volley, you learn to approach shots, you learn to hit aggressive attacking shots and come in. And so that's you're taking time away by doing that. But buying time and like when do you need to buy time and like how does buying time what does it look like to buy time in a good way? Any like these are the fundamental shots that people should have in their arsenal to buy time?
The first one the main one that comes to mind, when you're rallying baseline to baseline and your opponent takes you off the court, right? So they push you side to side, you're off the court. One thing that we teach is the window system. So you think of window 1 above the net, window 2, window 3, 3 being the highest. And so when you are being pushed off the court and you're now physically on the side of the court, your job is to then recover and get back into position to be able to receive the next ball. So your job, window 3 and above, is to send that, we want to call it a moon ball or a lob. You want to send it high and deep. So that gives you time, you're buying time so that you can recover back into position, hopefully somewhere in the center. And then that basically give yourself a chance to get back in the rally. So I'd say that high moon ball, a high deep spinny shot, if you can get that, that's buying time.
And when do you decide whether to buy time or, and this is my default,
Mm-hmm.
I'm counterpunching. So it's like instead of buying time, I want to take the shot that you hit offensively to me that's getting me stretched off the court, and it's like and this is probably not good because I sometimes try to go too aggressive on something that is maybe too difficult. And so how do you differentiate when to make the decision of like, let me hit this loopy ball versus, ooh, let me hit an aggressive ball off this aggressive ball and let me counterpunch versus defend and buy time?
Well, so let me ask you a question. So imagine you and I are playing, and I have now taken you off the court. So you're literally, let's say, in the doubles alley or even beyond.
Okay.
If you go for an aggressive shot, where are you hitting that shot?
I'm either hitting that down the line or a sharp angle.
Okay, so if you're hitting a really sharp angle, margin for error. And then if you are, let's say, either down the line or typically if you're trying to play a safer shot, so let's say somewhere down the line or closer to the center, if you hit a really aggressive shot, because remember, I'm already there. So you've now given me an opportunity to do what? Hit across court, right? So unless you are covering, unless you're insanely fast and you're covering the court, if you're comfortable enough that you can hit an aggressive shot and get back, or even if you can follow the ball in somehow, great. But ultimately, if you're going for an aggressive shot, you've now left the entire court open. So your opponent, especially at your level, your opponent's going to be able to hit that down the middle or cross court like that. So it just depends. Now you could go short cross court, definitely an option, especially if you can go low short cross court. But again, for me, I just say high percentages because you hitting, like at the end of the day, what are you trying to accomplish? Because even if you hit a shorter cross court shot off, let's say as a right-handed player, even as a left-handed player, although actually those are two different shots, but hypothetically as a right-handed player, if you're hitting a short cross court shot, they're still able to come in. You've still left the court open because you're off the court. So for me, recovery, or at least buying time, it's for my sake so that I'm able to give myself the best chance to get back in the point because you've now hit a really aggressive shot. Me trying to be aggressive back, you could, but again, if I'm playing against someone like yourself, you're hitting a winner.
As I'm thinking about it, because it's like, okay, so say I'm pushed out wide either side and I'm standing, less than 1 meter away from the baseline, the back. So closer to the baseline, like one big step. I'm inside one big step off the baseline, so I'm not too far back, or I'm on the baseline. And I'm not wider than the doubles alley. So I'm kind of on the side. At that point, I think you either got to hit it really good down the line, say they hit a really good cross-court ball, and they're not there and you want to try to beat them on it, or you hit an aggressive cross-court ball because they got to hit down the line on it. But if I'm wider than the doubles alley, or even further back, like I'm pushed further back behind the baseline, it's just really hard to attack from those places. So I'm looking at like the dimensions of a court, and kind of like when you're inside the baseline to a certain point, now's the zone where you hit an approach. And, if you're going from an outside ground stroke cross court to an inside ground stroke, maybe inside in, you kind of use that line kind of halfway between the, for people imagining like you're on one half of the court, and you divide that half of the court basically by half. If you're hitting a ground stroke on the inside half, you might want to go inside in on that ground stroke. If you're on the outside half, you're probably going to want to go cross court. And so it's like another zone that's kind of this like thin line behind the baseline and out to just outside the singles alleys. It's like at this point you can still counterpunch, but if you're too far wide, too far back.
Because I was just going to say, if you're still if you're on the baseline and you're still kind of inside the singles line, it's not really a place.
No, let's say outside. Let's say I'm outside the singles line, but inside the doubles alley, and I'm not too far back. At this point, I think I could still attack,
for sure,
or hit a solid ground stroke and not try to hit buy time. If I'm wider or deeper, now I want to hit bigger loops, or say I'm running to that ball, even if I'm literally the ball is inside the singles line, but I'm running to it and I'm not set. Because then that's another thing. It's like your brain as a tennis player needs to be like, based on where I am, what shot am I hitting? And then also based on how I'm set up, what ball am I hitting? If I'm reaching and not set like, you would if you're hitting a ball in a ball machine. If you're not set, you can't really counterpunch well. You can't really hit aggressive well. You've got to just surrender and be like, hey, I'm going to hit a big loop.
Well, and this is where it becomes
pop it up.
Yeah,
for a reset.
I think this is where it becomes a little more complex. So I'll say this at a very rudimentary, very at the basic level. My thought process is: if I counterpunch, am I going to have enough time? If they get to that ball, will I have enough time to recover? And if I don't, that's the wrong choice. But to your point, it gets a little bit more complex because, for example, if I'm on as a right-handed player, if I'm on the run and I'm doing like I'm just reaching for it with my forehand, and it's gonna be more of a slice, then yeah, I'm just gonna chop it up, lob it, recover. Right? That's buying time. If I'm able to now, maybe can I get there, and then is it more of a right? So basically, jump off my right foot, land on my right foot, and then I can sort of push off. Like for me, it's a matter of what can I do with the shot. How am I positioned? And then how am I going to then recover using my footwork? Because if you are closer to that singles line, you could counterpunch cross court. And depending on what they're now doing, if they're reaching, you could follow the ball in. And now you're sort of, you're approaching that. But yeah, so I would say for me, the buying time specifically is if I'm deep behind the baseline or if I'm being completely taken off court and I'm past the doubles line, the doubles alley, I'm lobbing it back.
These moon balls and reset balls are not easy to even receive. It's like, I hate when Naomi and like these women are so good at it. They do it so well, and they just hit these crazy loops. And it's not that easy just to hit a big, slow, high looping ball. Well, like you're supposed to take advantage of it, and you should. but to effectively hit a good, dictating, aggressive, point developing ball off a high looping moon ball is not easy.
And there's because even within the what we call the moonball category, there's different kind of balls. To that point, my mixed partner, she played D1 tennis in Toronto. Well, she played D1 tennis, but came back to Toronto. I remember her and I were just, whenever we would get into a rally, like point play, she would send a really spinny high moonball type ball, but it wasn't like just like a beginner's moonball. It had some spin to it, a lot of spin to it. Man, I struggled. It was a struggle. It was very challenging because I found myself, I had to always back up and I couldn't really hit the ball that I wanted to hit. So 100%, it's not, it's not always easy.
All right, what you had a question you wanted to ask me?
I got a question for you. So a lot of people don't know this. So Grant, you actually used to coach.
Yes.
A lot of myself, in the beginning, I didn't know this either. So a lot of people don't know this. So I'm just curious, as a former coach, and you still coach, your peers, and albeit maybe not formally, and now as a player, what would you say players who are signing up for lessons? What would you say is what is a good way to spend your money in terms of lessons? What is potentially a bad way to spend money? Are private lessons worth it? Are there any private lessons that you think are a complete waste of money? Anything that coaches in general just do that you can look at from your perspective and go, that's a complete waste of whatever, $100 an hour? I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
There's a lot of things to work on in tennis, and there's a lot of ways to work on it. And I find each thing that you need to work on, there's the best modality for it. So if you need to practice a specific shot, forehand cross court, backhand cross court, forehand down the line, backhand down the line, forehand inside out, forehand inside in, volleys. If you want to practice a specific shot, the ball machine is your best friend because you just need to do that thing over and over and over again. However, if the reason you need to practice that shot is because you don't know how to hit it, that is where the coach is valuable. Because the ball machine isn't going to tell you whether you're doing it right or wrong, and practicing bad habits leads to a bad player. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
I'm so happy you said that, because people are like, I practice so many hours. I'm like, yeah, but you're practicing the wrong thing, and therefore you're ingraining the wrong thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's like every profession in the world, like a salesperson, like, oh, I did a lot of sales calls. I'm like, yeah, but you could be dog shit on those sales calls. You're just going to become a dog shit salesperson. You need to have someone who's good listening to your calls live and training you, role playing with you, so you have perfect practice around how you should say the scripts, and then you go do it. Because you need to get your reps in with perfect technique. And if you don't have that technique for a shot, that's what a coach is for. Is to help you refine your technique, give you instant feedback. And the really best coaches will do video analysis, because sometimes a coach is trying to communicate what changes a person needs to make. And everyone is different with their body awareness, right? Because first I was a coach in tennis for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years or something like that. And then I trained in fitness for another 5 years and was a personal trainer for lots of people.
That's right.
In both, you get these people who are just, and usually it's athletes, they've done other sports before. If you tell them how to move their body, they're able to listen and then just go do it. And they're able to do it really quickly. There's other people who, in fitness we call motor morons. And they just, you tell them how to move their body and they just can't do it. But a visual of how they are doing it and a visual of how it should be done, sometimes that is the best way for people to learn quickly. And if you are paying a coach, it's because you want to accelerate your learning on a technical thing. So they're going to help you with the technique piece. And the next piece a coach is really good at is the strategy, mindset, strategy, tournaments, winning matches. Ball machine's not going to teach you that. If you just go out and play with your bunch of your friends and you don't know what to think in the match, you don't know how to strategize the match, it's not going to help you. You can play, and there's so many people I see where we're from who've been playing tennis for years, and this happens in every city. People play tennis for years and they're not getting better. And it's because just going out and playing tennis and playing league doesn't just make you better.
100%.
And so a coach is going to help you think, because tennis is such a cerebral, emotional, spiritual, and strategic and mental tough sport, that a coach will help you be a smarter player when you play matches and work on combinations and setups and in doubles, like certain formations.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need a coach for that part of tennis. And then you need a coach for like the technical, let's make speed up and give you perfect practice with perfect technique. And the best combination is to have a coach work on some technical thing that you're not good at, then go drill it out with a ball machine over and over and over again, and then have a coach help you with some strategy and gameplay and combinations, and then go play matches after that coaching session. And both are 1-2 punches where if you do those things together, you will accelerate your game a whole lot faster.
It's awesome. Something you said, this is going to be potentially controversial statement. I think this is my take as a player, as a coach. I've been doing this for quite some years now. If you're working as a player, if you're working on something technical and your coach is not using video analysis, you're wasting your money. Maybe not wasting your money, but you are not getting the value you could be getting from said lesson. I've been fortunate enough, I mentioned him in the past with Greg. With OTI, I've been working, I, as a player myself, I went through a lot of video analysis. To that point, every coach has a different way that they communicate with their words and their body. And then every player has their way of receiving that information. And sometimes people are very lucky and they're very fortunate where everything gets married together in great fashion. But you'd be surprised how many times I show players, I'll record their strokes. Even yesterday, I had a lesson with one of my really good students, Kim. She's a lovely lady, 65 years old. I love her growth mindset. She wants to get better. She's a very, very decent, competent tennis player. And I kind of tricked, she knew I was going to be recording at some point, but I tricked her. And I said, hey, I'm going to record later. We're just going to rally together. And I pressed record. She had no idea. And so we started rallying back and forth. And within 3-4 forehands, that's what she wanted to work on. Stop the camera. I said, come over here. And I said, what do you think? Because she's having issues with her arm. And I said, what do you think the issue is? And she told me something completely different than what I was seeing in real life. Turn the iPad around, show her quickly the 3 or 4 shots. And she's like, oh, wow, I had no idea I was doing this. So for me, and I've worked with people who are trying to learn a one-hand backhand where they literally have said to me, I've been doing this for 18 years. This is the first time in half an hour that I've been able to actually understand what I'm doing wrong. And it's not because I'm an excellent coach. It's not because necessarily I have any kind of wisdom that others don't have. It's just the ability to look at the video and see what you're doing wrong. Married that with instruction, completely agree with you. I think video now, specifically on technical video, is huge. So Grant, so tell me. So you're now a player, you're a club level player, you're looking for that coach. Is there anything specifically that you should be looking for? So obviously you want to be looking, but one more thing I'll say is this. I agree with you. I tell my players, I actually refuse I turn a lot of players away from more than one lesson a week at most. I'll say maybe once every 2 weeks, because I find that players get dependent on their coaches. My preference is we'll have a lesson. I'll give you some information, whether it's teaching you a new thing or giving you things to work on. You go and work on that thing. You go and practice it with a ball machine, with a wall, with a partner, whatever. Once you kind of start working, grooving and start working on it, and you kind of hit a wall, come back to me and we'll go from there. Either retweak or work on something new. But if you're looking for a coach, what are some things that people should keep in mind when they're looking for that kind of coach? Is there any kind of quality? Is there anything they should be questions they should be asking? What do you think?
Unfortunately, there's limitations depending on where you live with what coaches are available. So I'm going to give you some criteria to look at, and you just got to, one, try different ones out. Like, it's not a problem to try out different trainers, try out different tennis coaches, try out different physios, try out different massage people. You got to try some people out. And, if you're improving, that's the result you're looking for, right? So you should have a barometer of people you lose to and people you beat and what the scores are. And if you get coaching, your scores should get better, plain and simple. So that's like my first, because depending where you are, you might not be able to access certain types of coaches. Now, if I was to say a criteria, so first, if a player has achieved what you are trying to achieve, and I think like this for all coaches of any kinds, a business coach, a personal trainer, a tennis coach, you want to find people who are who you want to be or who have achieved what you want to achieve. And in tennis, that is skill level. So if you're a 3.0 player, you need a coach who's at least a 4.0 player. And sometimes a coach who has been playing since they were 8 and is a college pro, semi-pro, whatever player, sometimes they're not the best coach for you because they can't relate to someone who started tennis late. They are too far away from someone who is 3.0 personally, and they may not be effective at coaching certain types of players. It's possible that some players are really only good at coaching high-level players because they are or were a very high-level player. Now, a great coach can coach all levels, and the fact that they've achieved such really high level just means that they have a wide range of people they can coach, and that's based on coaching ability. Now, the second piece is coaching ability. And so a player may be good, a player may have taken lots of certifications. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a good coach. A really good coach, asks really good questions. And a really good coach knows what drills to work on and how to do them. And that's where, video is the new thing. I remember, so when I was a coach, YouTube didn't exist. So, and there was this website.
You're aging yourself.
There was this website that when it came out, us coaches like me, I found this, and I got my the director of the club. I was like, can you please let me buy this for the coaches? Because I was like the head pro, and I was like, this would be so valuable for me and the players. It was slow motion video. It was this like rinky-dinky crazy site that was the first to come out with slow motion video of the pros. And I find that is super effective to like see the pros in slow motion, like monkey see, monkey do. And now YouTube is your best friend, everyone. Like just go on there and look at slow motion, backhands, forehands, serves, overheads, like every single shot you can imagine from the pro that you want to look like, because not everyone wants to look like Nadal or Federer or Djokovic or whatever. So a good coach, and this comes to like the gelling. So I think a criteria like, do you gel with the coach? You got to enjoy it. If you're in a good state because you enjoy the coach and how they talk and their demeanor and their attitude and their energy, I mean that's super important, because if you have a hard time understanding them or you just don't like the way they talk to you, you're not going to pick shit up quickly. You're not going to want to be there, and you're not going to learn. So you got to like the coach personality-wise. The coach has to be who you want to be, or be at, or have the level of experience that you want to get to, so you know that they can get you from A to B. I don't know. I want to keep it simple.
I think player development is such a big piece of this. If your goal, let's say when you start off, if you can only rally 5 balls back, that's your ceiling. You break at 5 balls when you rally down the middle, and you're like, you know what, I want to achieve 15 balls in a row, 20 balls. If you're spending a year and you still can't achieve that, either something's wrong with you in terms of like you're either just not putting in the work and you're not working on it, or your coach is just not, there's just something that's breaking down. So having something to show, I summarize it, I just put under the umbrella of player development. If you are not getting better, something's wrong. For me personally, one of the things that drives me, and I can, by the way, I completely agree with you. I think players should have multiple coaches. I think people should have one main coach, someone they trust, someone that is close to them geographically, hopefully, someone that knows you as a person, someone who's invested in you. But I've, even myself, when I was younger and I was playing, I had 3 coaches. I had my main coach who was there with me in Toronto, and she was, I was texting her. She was there. She, had lessons twice a week. But then I had a coach in Florida who was specifically my coach for serving, because for whatever reason, funny enough, my main coach, the way she was explaining the serve to me, my brain was not understanding it. And so I found someone came highly recommended, Greg. I went to see him, and I used to go to Florida once every 3-4 months, and my serve just exponentially. So I had him as for my serve. I had her as my main coach, and I had a third coach who was specifically for, at the time, just for mental stuff, because I just crumbled every time I was playing matches. So I find it really strange. I understand why, because people got to make a living, but I find it really strange when people get very jealous over their players, and they have this mentality of, I'm your only coach. If you don't come to me only, no. You want to learn. At the end of the day, your job is to make that player better, and it's all about them. But I will say, for me, one of the biggest pet peeves, as I watch, no, none of us are perfect, but for me, you watch a lot of coaches, unfortunately, out there that have, I call it the template. For me, the biggest red flag, and again, if you're a club player, not saying that I have it all together, that I'm the best coach, 100% not. But for me, I find a lot of times, especially really seasoned coaches who've been doing it for a really long time, they have this, every single lesson has a template, and they apply the same template to every single lesson. So you watch them at 8:00 in the morning with 60-year-old Susie, and they're working on the template. And then 4 hours later, 5 hours later, they're working with a high performance junior, and they're doing the exact same thing in terms of same lesson plan. And I'm going, how do you have 5-6 different people in a span of 6 hours working on the exact same thing? And one thing that I really find, just to kind of link back to, my next question and link back to our previous episode, I find that part of this template is the last, and it drives me batty, the last 10 minutes of every lesson is what? Let's see. Serve. See, the template. It's service line to service line, mini tennis. Then you go baseline to baseline. That's their warm up, right? And again, we're all guilty of it. And that's your first 10 minutes of the lesson, check mark. Then it's like, hey, we're just gonna, we're gonna rally. What do you want to work on, Susie? You want to work on your forehands, backhands, fine, great. Then you might bring them into the net and you work on some volleys, maybe some overheads, and then that magical last 10 minutes of the lesson. All right, we're ready for serves. And as we discussed earlier, I think you and I agree, serves are probably the most important shot in tennis. And we spend the least amount of time on our serve. So Grant, my question is, how much time should a player be spending on their serve?
More than they're currently doing is probably the answer, including me. I'm really bad at it. And I had a good reason for a period of time, which was like I didn't want to over serve and hurt my shoulder. And so it was like, I'm just going to save my serve for matches and, practice my serve in my practice matches. But then my shoulder's been good. So it's like I should get out there and do more buckets. And so I've gone through periods where I would do that. I definitely don't do it enough.
Because that was my next question. I was going to ask you, you personally, Grant, how often do
Yeah.
you practice your serve?
No, I mean, what I really hate is I can't on so many courts. This place I just got a membership here, court reserve as well. I can't book a court on my own, and that's what practicing the serve is. One person on a court with balls serving, and I can't do it in these systems. It like doesn't allow you to work on your serve. So that's my pet peeve with clubs is they don't let players easily just take up a court to work on their serve because that's kind of what's happening. And so that's why I'm getting coaches here to work on my serve, which is, I was going to ask you this question. How many things do you think you can work on in an hour? So when like a proper coaching session is, this is what we're going to work on today. And it could be serve. And like, do you need a whole hour for serve, or is that too much? And you need to break it up with maybe one or two other things. How many things can a player effectively work on in a 1 hour session?
That's a phenomenal question. So my coach in Florida to this day, he has a rule for privates, and it's a 2-hour minimum. So he doesn't do 1 hour privates because he doesn't believe that you can learn his theory, that you can learn enough, you can grasp enough in 1 hour. One thing that I've learned through all my certifications with Tennis Canada, and I've been so guilty of it myself, especially when coaches first start out, they either get nervous, but they think they need to impart all this wisdom, and they try and overload the players with all this information. And I think in my experience, the best coaches are the ones that pick one thing, and they're like, this is the one thing we're going to work on. Whether it's, we got to make sure the ball is this high over the net. And, if you want to pick one thing that's technical and just to drill that one thing, because the tendency is to, you go this one thing, wait, then your backswing's off, and then your footwork is off, and all the next thing you know, the player's going, what is going on? So my answer is to really effectively make a change and influence a change, I would say 1, max 2 things. So when a player comes, I was going to say, if a player comes to me and says, hey, I want to work on my forehand, also the transitioning, also the backhand and the volley. Nope. I always say, pick one thing, maybe 2. And usually what ends up happening is we'll spend 40, 45 minutes on that one thing. And then
Good break. Future tennis star
right here. So, and then usually what ends up happening is 40 minutes is spent on the one thing. And then we sort of maybe just get started on that second thing. And then usually that just bleeds into the next lesson. But I'd say 1, max 2 things.
So I'll say 2 because I think one thing, it's hard even for me who can concentrate well. I think I get bored and also too tired from that one thing. So it's like I need something else to break it up. And I think by working on something, then changing it up to the other thing, then going back to see if you can still stop and then go back to the thing and still, continue where you are. So I think 2 things in 1 hour can be done. And it's so funny when I have gotten coaching recently, I come with my own plan, right? So I'm like, look, I know what I want to work on, and I know I need a coach to help me do it. And they want to run me the template, and I'm like, I've already warmed up, I'm already ready to go. I don't need any of this bullshit. Okay, let's do this. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, this is how this session is going. And
I'm telling you, the ability, this is the thing, and it's so hard for coaches. The ability to be in the moment and just see what's in front of you and work with what's in front of you is so bloody hard, because in our head, we built up experiences, we built up repetitive things that have worked in the past. And so we're so eager to just be like, this is the pattern. One term that got used quite a bit, and it's almost like a favorite shot bias. When someone's working on a serve, for example, most coaches, they look for that one thing that they're really good at, or the one thing that they always kind of see that the problem is, and it's called like a shot bias or like an error bias. So, for example, if the elbow drop is something that most people struggle with, anytime you work on the serve, that's the first thing you go to, even though that player may not even have an issue with it. They may have an issue with internal shoulder rotation. So 100%. That's but sorry, going back to the question, I would say for me, if you're a club level player, I'd say an hour, 2 hours a week if you can. By the way, this is if you're healthy. If you're healthy, if you're not having any issues. And remember, even when you're practicing your serve, it doesn't have to be 100%. You can practice at 40, 50% power, just work on the technical, work on the, if you're working on, let's say you want to work on white serves or whatever, you can work with 40%. You don't have to go full out, but just getting that motion, working on that serve, because so many players, again, they can rally based on the baseline. And I hate, I'm not going to mention their names, but it's crazy to me watching those 3 ATP level players. They were running, it was a 2-hour session, and the first hour and a half was just drilling, rallying. Holy crap. Speed, the anticipation, the ability to play. It's just next level. Their serves were garbage for their level. And, my buddy said to me, watch, their serving is garbage. And these are, by the way, these are future level players. These are challenger level players. They are phenomenal. They just played D1 in the States, and their serve, I'm not kidding you. And I'm saying this boldly, I'm pretty sure my serve is just as good, if not better. In terms of, it's for where they're at in their game. I was expecting artistry, garbage. And it's because they don't spend time working on it. That's just the reality. Cool. Any fun drills, Grant, you can think of that you like to do when you do practice serving? What should players work on when they're serving? Because as you said, it can get repetitive. Okay. It can get boring. So what should people be working on?
Okay, this is my favorite serve thing, because usually people will work on their serve on their own. Yes, go get a coach to work on the technical, but once you have that, you don't need a ball machine. You just need to go out there and find a core and bring a bag of balls. And you don't need a lot of balls. You need 10 balls. Okay, my favorite drill is to line up 10 balls in front on the baseline, like beside me, okay, as I'm serving. So for me as a lefty,
tripping hazard.
Right. So as I'm a lefty, I put those balls beside me. I'm not gonna like jump and land on them. I put them far enough away. But there's 10 balls. Because it's hard to simulate the pressure of a match when you are serving. And the serve is 90%, maybe 95, because it's actually quite complex movement. So maybe 90%. But it is so mental. Serve is so mental. If you are confident in your serve, you tend to accelerate through it, which is a key. You use your legs more, which is key. You jump and go at the ball, which is key. And if you're confident at it, you're not looking at where it's going to go. You just look at the ball, you know you're going to do it well. And it comes from this faith, this trust in your serve, and this confidence. And the struggle that everyone has is that big points, you're serving, your hands are shaking, and you're like, oh my God, and then your form breaks down. And so how do you train this? 10 balls, pick a serve. So first serves, okay, and then you can have a chart, and this is how you can improve. You have a chart, you got all 3 serves, wide, tee, body on both sides, flat for the first serve. You don't do a flat second serve typically. Flat for the first serve, and then for both first and second serve, slice and topspin. So you've got, I don't know how many combinations there are there, more than 24. Okay. And so you take 10 balls and you pick a serve. So I'm going to test my first serve, slice down the tee. And a first serve, your percentage should be 60%. 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. And so you are there to try to see what out of 10 you get when you hit your serve. And then if you're doing a second serve, let's say kick body, you want to be doing 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. And especially for the second serve, you're like, I can't miss any of these serves. I got 10 balls and I pretty much can't miss a single one. And you feel the pressure. And so it's my favorite drill because it also, what it does is it shows you what your good serves are. And when you are playing a pressure point, and we talked about in every episode, a swing point or a game or break point, you need to pick the serve that you are best at. And if you don't have data about which your serves are your best, you might pick the wrong one. And so by doing this, you can see where you're at, and then you can work on your serve and get better at your serve and pick, okay, here's how to hit my second serve, this type of serve, this placement, and get a 9 or 10 out of 10. Here's the pace and the power and the way I do it to get me 9 or 10 out of 10. And then from there, you work on making it faster and, better placement, better spin. And same with first serve, you should be targeting 6 or 7 out of 10. It shouldn't be higher than that because that means you're not going hard enough, and it shouldn't be worse than that. That means you're swinging too hard, your technique's breaking down or something. And so this is my favorite drill for serving because it simulates the pressure of matches, which is what you want to be doing for serve because that's where things break down is the pressure. And it gets you to figure out what your best serves are because that also gives you better strategy for the matches. And then you also know what you need to work on.
I'm so happy you said that. Complete agreement. One of the drills that I personally like is the 18 ball drill. There's different variations of this drill. One that I actually do myself personally. So if you think on the do side, you have 3 out wide, 3 in the middle, 3 T. Then you go to the ad side, 3 T, 3 middle, 3 wide. So for me, my goal, so basically I get 3 attempts at each one of those serves, making up the 18 balls maximum. And so for me, I'm looking for the wide balls to hit the middle. So if I have nets drawn, my goal is to hit the wide shot so that off the one bounce, they hit the net on the side. And then my middle and my T serves, I'm looking for the bounce to hit the back wall. That's sort of my target for myself. And in terms of pressure, same thing. If you miss the way I do it is if you miss the first 2, you have one more ball to complete that one shot. If you miss, you go back to the beginning. And so I play, and for me, usually I'll tell myself, you're not leaving until you're finished. And so you might hit your target, you hit your target, you go to the other side, hit your target, and then 1 miss, 2 miss, 3 misses, right back to the beginning. And so for me, it's that applying the pressure. The second thing you said I absolutely love is charting. Please, please, please. I very rarely see this, especially at the club level. People practice their serves. How do you know you're getting better? Right? There's obviously the feeling, but how do you actually know you're getting better? And so the only way to test it is by charting. So hey, I'm now making 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Charting's huge. If you want to make it more fun, I also say play tiebreakers, second serves only. Again, in practice, it's really hard to replicate real life pressure. No matter how much we try, and there's certain tricks we can do, it's really hard. I would say even maybe almost impossible. But play a tiebreaker. Play fun tiebreakers, second serve only. If you miss, double fault. Automatically, you lose a point.
So most people, when you play tennis, you have an hour booking.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a set done in the last half hour, second serves only. Calvin and I did it we played a whole set, and we just had one serve.
Sure.
The entire time.
Sure. Cool. Well, changing gears real quick. I want more of a ruling because this actually happened to me. So more of a fun fact ruling. Throw it out there. Imagine you're in a rally and you're playing the point of your life, and then all of a sudden you come in for the approach shot. You hit a down the line forehand. Your opponent is off balance, running for their life. They get the racket on the ball. They hit a cross-court shot, and it's going to be a winner. It's just one of those clap your hands, nothing you can do. But as a last attempt, you throw your racket at the ball. It hits the racket and goes in. Does that count? You sure?
Actually, no, because even when Bublik did it, because he did it recently, where he threw his racket, and you can YouTube this, it was a short drop, everyone, it was a short drop that Shelton hit, and it was about to hit the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw his racket, and it actually landed on his racket and then bounced over the net. I think it was in, but his racket hit the net. But your racket has to be in your hand when you make contact. You can fall out of your hand, but at the point of contact, I think the racket has to be in your hand Am I right or wrong?
So the situation I just described, I was over the Christmas holiday. I was in Toronto. I was playing against a buddy of mine, and I think I was up 5-3 or something. Anyway, I came in. I hit the perfect approach shot down the line forehand. He just got to it, hit a cross court. I went for a backhand volley, and I just, as a last attempt to get into the ball, I tossed my racket. It hit the frame, and the ball went over. And I did one of these, like, oh my goodness, this is a highlight reel shot. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he's like, does it count? And I was way too excited. And I was like, I think so. I got back to the change room afterwards, and I looked it up, and according to the ITF rules, it does not count. So you are correct.
Yeah. And I have tried that shot so many times, it never works. I must have thrown my racket so many times to try to hit a ball.
You know what? I've done it a few times,
That's
and just as a miracle play, but it actually worked, and it's never happened to me before. But yeah, I looked it up. And fun fact, yeah, it is. The racket has to be in your hand when you're making contact. Otherwise, it's just a loose article. So if that happens to you and the racket's on your hand, it is not your point. So shifting gears, Grant, you're playing a tournament. As you know, a lot of club level players, 3-0s, 4-0s, 5-0s play tournaments. What's one of the biggest complaints that you hear players complain about when they're playing outdoors? So typically in the spring, the fall, what is one thing that players tend to complain about the most when they're playing matches that bothers them, in your experience? Wind. So I know it's a little bit of a big topic, but how do you play with wind? How do you play against wind? Are there any strategies? Is it just kind of, do you just do nothing and just play as if you would normally play? Because at the end of the day, both players have wind. Or is there something else you could try?
There's definitely a different way to play with wind. You do not play the same if the wind is strong enough. So if there's always typically going to be some wind, and based on the speed of the ball, it doesn't get affected by the wind. And this is what you have to notice, is based on how hard you hit and the revolutions of the ball when you hit it, is the ball being affected by the wind? And the one that will happen the first will be the toss on your serve. That is your first barometer, because there's not a lot of force on that ball. And so if you toss that ball up and then it starts to move forward and backward or side to one side or the other, it's like, okay, there's reasonable enough wind to start to change your strategy. So the next question is, where is the wind going? And typically it's either north-south, so it's behind you pushing forward, or it's in front of you pushing at you. And then the other wind is a side wind, where it's either going one way or the other way. Obviously, it can also go diagonally, and it can swirl around. So let's start with the north-south wind. If the wind is behind you, at your back, pushing forward, okay, which means if you hit the ball, it's going to go further than it would normally without the wind, then you need to use more topspin. So if you're in that situation, more topspin on your serve, more topspin on your ground strokes, and strategically, because the ball is actually going to go faster and further, deeper and faster because the wind's behind you, you want to play to that play to the wind. So you can serve and assume your serve will feel bigger to that player, and deeper shots will be deeper and heavier and push them back. And so as a strategy, you want to push your opponent back and then come in to finish the point. Okay, and use lots of topspin to do it. Topspin on your first serve can be flat, and a little more spike and more topspin, and ground strokes more topspin. And go for depth. Don't try drop shots or lobs. It's harder to do with wind. On the flip side, if the wind is coming at you, and if you were to hit the ball, it doesn't go as far, there's actually a way to use this to your advantage. And so on this side, slice serves work better, slice shots work better, and slice drop shots work better. Basically, because the ball's going to slow down because of the wind, it pulls your opponent in. And if your opponent is pulled in not by them hitting a deep, hard shot, like I said before, you want to hit heavy ground strokes to push your player back and then come in. But on the flip side, if you're the other player, you want to pull that person in with low, short drop shots and slices, because it's really hard for that player to kind of pick that ball up on a low, short slice and get it back down and not let the wind push it long. And when you have the wind against you, you can swing more freely. You can hit the ball harder and accelerate and use your whole body and feel like, oh man, I can just swing freely and accelerate and the ball's going to stay in, which means passing shots get easier because you get to just go for it. Again, lobs on both directions. Don't do passing shots if you have wind against you, are easier to do because you can just go crank them. And slices and serves, slice drop shots, slice forehands and slice backhands become more effective when the wind is against you. I'll leave it there and see if you got any other thoughts for north-south wind.
Yeah, I think you're on the money. For me, something that helps me remember what to do is a visual image of what happens in the wind. So for me, pretty much summarizing what you've said, when the wind is with you, meaning it's blowing into your back and it's helping you, which means your balls are going to go deeper, I visualize if your ball has no pace, if it's floating, the wind will pick it up and take it further. So that's why for me, it helps me remember to hit with more topspin to give it that shape of the ball. Because if you just do a lob or if you just kind of bunt it back, the wind will pick it up and take it, and typically it's going to fly out. Alternatively, when the wind is against you, so the wind's blowing into your face, I visualize you want to penetrate the air. You want to slice through the air to get, I don't know why, but I always think of an airplane kind of going through the wind. So for me, that's why I always think when the wind's against you, I typically will utilize a lot more knifey slices to get the ball to really penetrate, cut through the air. And so for me, I try and visualize those two things as with the wind, more topspin, so because you don't want the wind to take the ball. And then against the wind, you want to penetrate the air and you want to slice through the air instead of lobbing it. It's going to go nowhere. So that's kind of a visual that helps me. Now, east-west wind, what are your thoughts?
When you have east-west winds, to me, I think about on offense or defense in the rally. If I am on defense in the rally, I am likely going to be going against the wind to hit it cross court, across the wind, because I know it's going to that side wind is going to keep my ball in the court. So let's say the wind is blowing from my left to right. Then if I'm hitting a defensive shot, I don't want to hit a defensive shot to the right of the court because the wind will push it right further and it will carry it out. And so if I'm on defense, I want to put that ball to the left side of the court because it's going to be left or it'll be in the middle of the court. However, when I'm on offense and I'm set and I'm ready and I'm able to hit and control the ball the way I want to use the wind. And so this is where if the ball was going left to right, I want to hit cross court balls on offense to the right because I'm going to apply more topspin and make sure it lands in the court, but then that wind going left to right is going to push it wider and it's going to push that person out really far out wide, and they're either not going to be able to get it because the wind's just going to push it out, or they're going to get it and then the whole other side of the court is going to be available. So sometimes I'm using the wind to keep me in the point. Sometimes I'm using the wind to help me win the point.
Got it. Now, you know how excited I am and we're going to have an episode on this, and I'm so excited for it because we're going to talk about the mental side of the game. We're going to talk about whether it's in the same episode or not. I probably will be in the same episode about visualizing the matches and So we're going to have a whole episode dedicated to that. But briefly, what would you recommend for a player who struggles with this sort of psychologically struggles with wind? The wind comes up and you've heard it. I've said it. Oh, crap, wind. And so we start making a bunch of excuses. Are there any quick tips that help you or, might help others how to battle this thing?
Yeah. So I'll give you this story of how I changed the way I think about wind and feel about wind. So my first year getting back into tennis, because I don't know, I almost didn't really register wind when I was younger, and I took 10 years off. Like, I don't remember wind being a thing that much. A couple times, but I wasn't thinking much, period, as a young player. And so when I got back into tennis, I remember, and you might know this guy, Murwat, so he's on Team Canada this next year. Congratulations to him on the 35 plus. And I met him at this tournament, the ITF Masters tournament in Toronto, and we were playing at the Sobe Stadium. It was so windy that the umpire's chair fell down. These are heavy things. Plastic chairs that people had set up for the matches, flying on the courts. Like, this is hands down the windiest match I've ever played.
That sucks.
So I'll say, and I hadn't practiced, and because when wind comes, you're like, oh, it's too windy, I'm not playing. Right? This was the old me. It's too windy, not playing. Don't like wind, not playing. Then I come to a tournament where I can't just say that. I can't be like, hey, sorry, ITF, it's too windy, I don't want to play. Let's reschedule.
Wouldn't
They're
that be
like,
nice?
you're playing, and I'm like, mother effer. Okay, so now I'm playing this thing, and I don't know what to do, and I'm just getting so angry, so frustrated. I actually played not bad. It was 7-6, 7-5. It was like grueling. And I'll say one other thing about wind. In general, play to a smaller court. So it's like there's the sidelines and there's the baseline. Imagine there's new sidelines, like 1-2 feet in and 1-2 feet from the back, and your court's just smaller. And just play when it's so windy and it's swirling and you almost don't know what to do. Just play down the middle and keep it safe and just hit good solid balls down the middle. Back then, I had no idea. I was just getting frustrated, and the ball was really moving. Like, it was really, really, really windy, and I lost 7-6, 7-5. And so after that match, I was like, this might happen again. So then I cherished wind. And I was the player who was like, great, it's windy. Let's play. Let's train. Because I need to get comfortable with all types of wind, and I want to learn and practice wind. And so that right there is like the mindset and what showed up at Worlds. So I'm at the World Championships, and it is windy as heck in Turkey on this clay. My singles opponent, I could tell he was not used to wind like I was. And he was getting so frustrated. And I was there being like, I've played this north-south wind before. I know exactly what to do on this side and on this side. And I was just smiling and I was playing well, because when you are feeling good, you play better. And then I beat him. And he was just so beat up because he hated the wind. And I was just loving it. And I think just that right there is, it's a thing of tennis, and something that people forget a lot about tennis, because they're thinking about themselves. Like, I hate the wind. I hate the heat. I hate the courts. Whatever it is, there's something about the environment that they hate. The other player probably is thinking the same thing. So you know who's going to do better? Is the person who loves it more. And so just as a mindset thing, learn to love the challenge of the environment. And if your other opponent doesn't, you're going to do a whole lot better and probably beat them. And learn to love when it's really hot or really windy, or the courts have cracks in it, or the court's at a slope, or and love those things, because that's the case with lots of courts around the world, and you never know what you're going to get. in a league or in a tournament where you can't just say, sorry, I'm not playing today, and go out there and play in those tough conditions and practice different strategies so that when it happens, when it matters, you're calm, you're cool, collected, you know what to do, you know how to execute. That's my thing for conditions of all kinds.
That is, I think it's such good advice. That is the number one thing I tell players. Be the person that loves the conditions, because more likely than not, the person across from you hates those conditions. Because if you hate them, so do they. I was playing tennis in Florida with a buddy of mine. We got to these public courts. They were in horrendous condition, cracks everywhere, weeds growing out of the cracks. And I remember thinking, I even told him, I said, this is disgusting. And we're playing, and I'm just, it's just getting to me. It's frustrating. It's getting to me. And he's just having the time of his life. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is so gross. And he tells me, this is him telling me, I grew up in South Africa. All of our courts are like this. We don't have the luxury. Meanwhile, at the time, I'm training at the Toronto Cricket Club, which is, private club, nicely fresh clay courts. And so I'm a little bit of a prima donna that way. I'm used to really good, well-maintained tennis courts facilities. And, he's like, I grew up in South Africa where these were the conditions. And so it wasn't affecting him at all. It affected me. And the same thing, the biggest change for me with wind, because again, I used to play outdoors in Toronto, very, very windy sometimes in the summer. Oh, I hate wind. I hate wind. I hate wind. So do they. The person to first love the wind, embrace the wind, and recognize that your opponent hates the wind just as much, is going to have such a easier time. No, that's great advice. So you're playing wind or no wind. You're playing great. You're setting up your point, Grant. Imagine this: you're setting up your point. You do everything right. You will have a strategy. You're executing it. You now get to the net to finish off. You've put your opponent in trouble. They're now on the run. Their last attempt, their dash of getting the ball back. It is now time for you to put the volley away. And as oftentimes as we all do sometimes, the volley goes into the net. Why does it happen? What can we do? What can players do to eliminate those errors into the net? And is there anything they can work on to increase their percentages of finishing and putting away those volleys?
There's two things that happen when you miss balls. Either you made the wrong decision or you executed incorrectly. When it's an easy ball, and easy I put in quotations if you're not watching, because nothing is easy in tennis, and sometimes these putaway balls are the hardest because there's no pace on it and there's more pressure for you to actually win and put the point away because you kind of should. And so when you get tight and when you get overzealous and too arrogant, too cocky, your technique breaks down. And so when people miss those easy balls, it's not likely because they're making the wrong decision. The decision is there's an open court. Just put the ball into the open court and just put it in the court. The problem is the execution. What happens when you get these nice, easy floater sitters, you're running, let's say for volley, you're running to now put that volley away. Your eyes go, I'm about to win this point. This ball looks easy. And then you slow down. And when you slow down, you sometimes don't get to the ball and you're still reaching for the ball. When you slow down, you don't accelerate your swing through the ball. You don't move your body through the ball, because when you hit a ball, an approach shot, an attacking shot, a volley, you don't just put on the brakes and kind of hit a ball. You actually move your racket and your body through the ball on most on these types of shots. But what happens is you think, oh, I'm winning, and then you just kind of like stop and swing at it. and it's all arms, no legs. You're barely even looking at the ball. And it just comes from you taking it easy, you taking the foot off the pedal. And, so my thing is when these put away balls, they're so important because they happen and you need to win get these ones, these easier ones. And so, but they're so important. And so you should increase your focus, increase your intensity, increase your movement, increase your precision on how to execute this ball. And so I treat them mentally as like, ooh, this is harder. It needs more of my focus, needs more of my intensity.
Mm.
And by responding in that way when I see it, I now execute it more correctly. And so when people miss these putaways, it's not a decision type of miss, it's an execution type of miss, and it's an execution type of miss because you stop trying. And so you need to keep trying until the point is over. And heck, when you move up in levels, what looks like a putaway, especially when you play people who are young or fast,
Yeah.
you think, oh, I'm gonna just hit this cross court ball and the point's over, and somehow they still get to it. And so nothing is over
Until it's
until
over.
it is over.
The cardinal rule for every player is never stop, never give up on a point until it's actually over. Lord knows there's so many times I've hit forehands that I thought were winners. I'm like, oh, great. They're barely even moving. And then somehow they just get to it and I'm not ready for the next shot. I'd say, so for me, I completely agree with that. For me, I'd say the three biggest mistakes that I find with players hitting volleys into the net, and I'll say in this order. Number one, and you kind of touched on it, number one is they pump the brakes before they hit the ball. So a visual that I personally use with my students is when you're driving a car, when you slam on the brakes, what physically happens to you? You get thrown forward. So one thing that I try, and this is kind of my analogy, it's always racket before the foot, not the other way around. Because oftentimes players will step, then swing versus, and it happens ever so quickly, but your swing, your volley goes first just before you step because you want to go through the ball. Because as soon as you step with your foot, you're applying the brakes. And then your body jerks forward, which typically results in you going into the net. So as you practice your volleys, my recommendation is always practice as you step out with your outside foot, whether you're lefty or righty, you step out with your outside foot. And then as you step in, you're going to step first with your racket, you're going to swing through, then step with your inside foot, not the other way around. Because if you step first, that's applying the brakes. So that's the biggest mistake I see players make. The second thing is, to your point, is decision making. Because oftentimes, and I love the fact that you put in quotation marks, because it looks like an easy shot. It's an easy put away volley because it's slower, it's probably higher. But what it means is that you have more time to make a decision. And oftentimes as players, when we have more time to make a decision, we are more likely to change our minds halfway through. And then it happens to me all the time. I think I'm going to do something. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to do a trick shot. Actually, you know what? And before you know it, you actually trick yourself. So make a decision quick and give yourself more. Tell yourself it's a more important point, as you said, and give more attention to make sure you put the ball away. And then the third thing I find, and I'm sure especially club level players, you see this all the time, way too much swinging, way too much racket movement. So there's just way too much, either too much backswing, which forces them to overswing, or just swinging down. So I always say a good drill to practice is stand right in front of the net and envision the path of the racket going past the net. So you want to go as you're volleying, you want to, this is the net, you want to go past the net. So to really practice the lateral movement of your racket versus swinging downwards, which is such a common mistake. And again, most volleys. Some volleys might require you more of a catching volley, but if you're looking to put away, you want to go forward past the net psychologically, not downwards. Cool. Great. Love to know your thoughts. Underhand serves. Are those legal? Some players do them. What are your thoughts? Should players
I
work on their?
love a good underhand serve. As a big server, a lot of people then stand far back to return my serve, and I don't want to let them do that because I know it makes it easier to return my serve. They stand far back and can move a little bit.
Is that legal in tournaments? If you're playing ITF
Yeah,
tournaments, yeah.
100%. I did an underhand serve at World Championships against this French team who are both on the ATP tour. We were not winning. And I was just like, okay, well, I want to win some points here. And they were standing really far back. It was clay. And so I was like, fuck this. I'm fucking doing an underhand serve on this guy. And then we won the point, and he was so shocked because people don't expect it. So I don't think everyone should do it. Based on who you are, you should not do it. Because if you don't have a big serve, the person's already standing on or inside the baseline. So then you give them an underhand serve, you're just giving them a short, slow, easy ball to approach and put you on defense. The whole reason why people do the underhand serve is because people are standing really far back, and it's actually, there's so much distance to carry. They actually won't get there on time, and they'll hit a bad shot or hit it out or not even get there at all.
Now, I'm going to hold you accountable because I've never seen you hit an underhand serve. Not once.
That's because you don't stand far back in the returns.
Okay.
Yeah, you stand like 1 or 2 foot back from the baseline, and you're looking to whatever. But
Okay.
that's the reason why.
I have a one underhand serve per match rule. And I tell everyone this. I'm like, at some point in the match, I'm going to have one underhand serve. And I pick my moments. And once I exercise this one time, it's done. Walking down memory lane, actually, Grant. Last year, we were playing mixed, my partner and I, against you and Amanda. And I think it was a tiebreaker. And we were down.
Your match point.
Was it no, it wasn't match point. We were down.
I'm pretty sure it was.
No, it was a break.
Nothing important.
I think it was either a break point or it was on serve 8-9. I think it was 8-9.
Yeah, break. It was a very important point.
It was a very important point. But I remember this is a weekend tournament, and 5th, 6th match in that weekend, my shoulder was just dead. It was blown. It was numb. I couldn't feel a thing, and I can feel my error count climbing. Right, I think I had a few double faults in that tiebreaker, and I can just feel it's tight, and I know if I'm gonna serve, chances are, my confidence is a little bit low now. I can't feel my shoulder, and it was a very important point. And I was serving on the ad side against Amanda, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give her a chance to miss because I don't want to be the one missing. And I hit an underhand serve.
It worked.
It still haunts.
No, in ITF tournaments all the time, because those old guys, they just stand far back on my serve. Like, so many people stand far back on my serve, and so in tournaments all the time.
Now, I'd love to know what's your opinion, because there are a lot of people, and I've met them myself. There are a lot of people who think that if you serve underhand, you're a jerk. If you serve underhand, like I play. There's a lady here in Kelowna that I play with, and sometimes we're friends, but just to tick her off, I'll do an underhand. She's a good player, by the way. She plays ITF tournaments, and I think she's 3rd in Canada in her age category. But I'll serve underhand just to get under her skin, and she's always like, "Oh, you're the guy." But players have very, very mixed emotions about some hot takes about underhand serve. Are you a jerk because you serve underhand?
Absolutely not. People say people are jerks for doing drop shots. People say people are jerks for doing lobs. People say people are jerks for bagling them. Like, I can't determine how you feel. Like, people are like, oh, you have this like crazy weird slice serve. So like, I hate how you just do that serve. So like, people are just going to say that stuff for anything that they dislike, because you don't train it. It's not like you're like getting coaches and players and getting fed underhand serves to like know what to do. It's not that easy of a thing to deal with. Getting them, I've got them, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. There was a guy who in the tennis BC, he was serving to stay in the match. I had 4 match points in his serve game, and he did 4 underhand serves. I lost all 4 points. And this is a sanctioned semifinal or quarterfinal, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm not even dealing with this well. And I'm knowing he's even going to do it again because he's already done it a couple times, and I can see why. He's stressed out and he thinks he's going to double fault, and so he's going to do it. And it's just not that easy of a ball to put away or to deal with, because if you run in on underhand serve and you hit too much of a floater back, you're a sitting duck to get past. And so like you have to hit it, keep it low, keep it short, or do a drop on a drop, which is then you have to get there really quickly, or you have to have a really good top spin pickup, probably angle cross court, but then they're there cross. It's not that easy of a short. So I think people who think that you're a jerk, you're just a salty, sour, person who needs to learn how to retrieve it, learn how to do it, incorporate it. It's a shot.
So in a tournament, because you mentioned tournament. So in tournament play, you win in any fashion, shape, anything you can do to help yourself win ugly, if it's even ugly. But let's say you're playing a fun match with your friends, or you're playing a fun match with people, just at a club level. That's not an important tournament play. Is there some kind of etiquette you should be following? Do you view it the same way if you're playing against someone who's maybe a little bit older, someone who's a little bit slower? Is there etiquette around that?
So look, if you're playing practice matches and the person is standing really far back and you want to have this shot in your arsenal, then practice it. But if the person's not standing far back and you want to practice your serves, then practice your serves. I don't think it has anything to do with the opponent. I think it just has to do with like what's right for you.
What's the objective?
Yeah, what's the objective for you?
Yeah.
What are you there to do? If you're there to practice for match play and someone's standing really far back and you know that this potentially is a really good strategy and you don't get to practice it that often, so throw it in there and see if you can get better at it, go for it. But if you want to work on your serves, your second serves, so that in those pressure moments you aren't shaking and thinking, oh my God, am I going to double fault or should I do an underhand serve? No, practice your second serves, hit a proper serve so that you get better at it.
It's so interesting because I, for one, completely agree with you. As long as it's a legal shot, I got into a full-blown debate with two of our buddies because we were playing doubles, at Global, and we have those nets drawn between the courts. And so I'm serving on the deuce side as a right-handed player, and one of my really strong serves is an out wide slice. I hit that shot really well. And so we're playing doubles, and I was serving maybe 80 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, but a wicked slice, short and wide, and then it would hit the net. And so I'm not going to mention the names, but everybody goes, hey, that's a jerk move. We're playing doubles. There's a net there. I can't return that. And, my response was, well, be better.
Okay, so that one's a different serve. So I will say, as a lefty,
mm-hmm.
when I play with nets, I'm not trying to do that serve anymore.
Why not?
Because it's not simulating a match.
Why are you? So because I would ask you this: why are you playing? Right? Because obviously if you're playing with someone who's I don't want to use the word.
If I'm in a tournament, I will go for that net and that thing all day.
Yeah, but typically, and you still play tournaments. So I would argue that, my opinion, even your fun matches should be, especially as a tournament player, should be practice or use as practice for your tournaments. That would be my advice as a coach. I'd say, hey, why are you wasting your time if they're not building up for something else that you're playing, unless you're just a recreational player? But at the end of the day, the way I look at it is, if I'm playing, if there's a person in, who's, I don't know, 65, 7 years old, and they don't move as well, and they just want to go out and they just want to have a fun hit, just a rally, just to feel the ball. I'm not going to be doing drop shots every single shot because, again, that's not what they're there for. They kind of ask me to rally with them, and I'm not looking to get to get that. But if we're playing doubles, and it's even though it's fun doubles, it's still fun competitive doubles. My goal is to win. As a competitor, I want to win. So because that serve, that slice out wide is my forte, and that is a serve that I would use in a tournament because it is my strong suit. I'm going to practice that and I'm going to do it because I'm trying to win. I'm not here to just hit the ball back and forth. Again, my opinion. So for me, if you're a lefty, I was just gonna use it as an example. If you're a lefty, it's the equivalent of me saying, "Hey, Grant, you're a lefty. Do you mind not using your lefty serve as an advantage so that I can have an easier time returning your ball?" That would never
Well,
cross my mind.
see, the thing is, one, I try not to play with nets, and so if there's no nets, a fair game, I'm gonna slice you out as far wide as possible, kick wide, slice wide, whatever. But if there's nets, which again, it's because I'm not always playing with nets. So if I was always had nets, which some people where they play indoors somewhere, and there's always nets. If that's the case, okay, fine. You don't get to practice that slice serve when there's no nets. But for the limited time where there are nets in between the serve, I'm just not going to practice that serve. Because even though I want to win a match, there's lots of other ways to win the point, and I'm here to practice, and I think that's a cheap, so I would agree that is a cheap way of winning points, is leveraging the net. If I know the majority of the time I'm not playing with the net, so I would agree, dick move.
But I'll challenge that because on a friend to friend level, if my intention is to hit the net, then maybe I'll give you some leeway and say, okay, fine, maybe dick move. Maybe. But then again, so is an underhand serve. Some argue underhand serve is a dick move because you typically, I don't know. But my argument is that is my go-to serve. Whether the net is there or not, my go-to serve, one of my more comfortable shots on the deuce side, is an out wide slice. That's my go-to serve.
I would challenge you to have more serves.
Sure,
win points
for me, if I'm trying to win a point, and that's we talked about a few weeks ago, if it's a pressure point, what do? Typically, you go to your best serve. So my best serve is my out wide serve. Now, the result is it's so good that it hits the net and the guy has no chance. But my goal is not to hit the net. My goal is just to make sure that I either ace the guy or I try and give him a hard time. So I would argue if an underhand serve is not a dick move.
Well, there's lots of combinations where you can win off a body serve and you can win off a T serve, and you should practice those combinations when the net is on that side.
So then why underhand serve?
That's my view.
So then why underhand serve?
An underhand serve is not hitting typical structure that is creating not typical boundaries for widths of the court. Because if the net was not there, the player would be able to move to the side and hit a return. And that's what would happen in tournaments. And if you're playing competitively, it's to win tournaments and competitive sanction matches. And so by hitting serves in the net, you're actually not simulating anything that would happen in a tournament, because if you hit a serve out wide, that person's going to run wide and give you a new return. So because that net has taken away real simulations, I go, okay, what are other real simulations I can do right now? And it's point combinations off tee and body and not so wide serves.
Right, but you just mentioned that you also wouldn't do things as a lefty that you would in a tournament if the net is there, etc. I guess for me, I mean, the view is if I'm going to serve that serve, no matter what happens. And by the way, typically, even in a match with no nets, it's still an ace sometimes. So for me, that's my go-to serve regardless. I'm not going to change my game just so you can feel better about your return.
All right, everyone comment below. Is Val being a dick or not? Comment below. Hot take. Should you hit your serves into the net?
That's me. I'm a dick. Last question, Grant. So talking about the serve, talking about my shoulder, being blown in that third set tiebreaker against you and Amanda. You're playing a tournament. You're playing a match. Your body starts to hurt. Best advice. What do you do as a player?
I'm going through this one right now.
Okay.
So
what's wrong with you?
I've struggled with this one because when your body hurts, whether it be your shoulder, a lot of people have their low back starts to hurt, their hip starts to hurt, their knees start to hurt, their tennis elbow starts flaring up. Those are the typical ones. You're trying to focus on the point and strategy for the point and your execution for the point, and all you can think about is that fucking pain, in that part of your body, or the fucking wind, right, or whatever. Like there's something other than strategy and other than execution.
Some jerk serving into the net.
Some jerk serving the net. Oh, this is my. I've been going through it so much the last couple of years with different injuries, pains. And here's what I've learned so far that has helped. Number one, pain is temporary. There are times where you are in pain, and then as you keep playing, it goes away. And if you think the thought that the pain is temporary and it will go away, it actually helps speed that journey up. And it's a thought that gets your brain to accept and go back to what you need to be focused on. Because the thing you got to do is accept that you have this pain. So first, pain is temporary. The second thing is you're just going to have to try harder. And so my new thing now is, I'm not so good at pushing off to like go get to that ball and to jump on the serve and to get to the net. I'm going to have to push a whole lot harder. I'm just going to have to try a lot harder right now. Like I'm just going to have to dig deep and push harder, try harder, more, harder, go. So I give myself these affirmations, incantations to push myself, because I bet you that's what pros do. They can't just give up in their job that they get paid for because they have a pain. They just push through and fight through. So pain is temporary. Right now, I need to push through. And how can I change the way I'm playing if it's really serious? Like some pain, it's like just push through and don't be a little bitch. Other pain is like, okay, like this is a serious one. So what do I need to avoid? And how do I avoid this thing? So for example, I remember in a tournament, I tore my groin, and that hindered my ability to go side to side. So for the rest of the match, on every single point, I was running to the net. I was running on first serve, I was coming to the net on second serve, I was chip and charging. Everything was vertical movement because that's all I could do. And so I did it, and I almost won the match. I had 2 match points, 7-6, and I should have been nowhere close. But I changed my strategy, and it worked. And so another one would be like, my tennis elbow hurts, and it hurts a lot on the backhand. Okay, great. So let's run around backhands, and let's not hit as much to the cross court, because the most likely shot, if I hit cross court backhand, is I'm going to get a cross court ball back, and I'm going to have to hit that ball again. So let me see if I can just keep the ball down the middle and to the forehand side, and let's see if I can just and run around my backhand, see if I can avoid my backhand. And so I think there's this problem-solving piece to pain that forces you to develop other sides of your game and develop other strategies, because you just kind of have to. And, I mean, Nadal winning Australian Open in 2022. If you have not seen that match, it's called the Miracle in Melbourne. It has got to be one of the craziest matches I've ever, unfortunately, slept in the middle, because as soon as Medvedev was up 2 sets, I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning and the match was still on. And I was like, what is going on? And Nadal was coming back. And then I watched that match over again, and he was going through these ebbs and flows of body pain, and he learned to take some energy off when he was in pain and he knew he was going to lose some more points, and he accepted that. And then when he felt good, he then went really aggressive and turned it back on again. And he changed the way he played based on how his body was performing. My friend Carson, I said that in another podcast, he literally gave up a whole set to let his arm relax and just chill out for a whole set. And then he came back and won the third set. I've seen so many smart players make smart moves, smart strategic moves when their body is in pain. And so those are my big three is 1, it's temporary, it's going to go away. 2, you're going to have to push a little bit harder. And 3, how can you change your strategy to compensate for the pain?
That's great. As the hockey player in me completely agrees with the push through bit in terms of, again, coming from hockey, people lose their teeth, people, torn ACLs, like you name it, and they come back and they push through. The tennis coach in me, not everyone is an Nadal, not everyone's playing ATP, when you got 3-4 mil on the line and that's your career. I completely agree. If you can push through, adapt. If something is hurting you specifically, a specific shot, stay away from it. Try and adapt around it. I would actually add a quick point that's a little bit contrary to if you think, if it's not an important match, if it's going to hurt you long term, sometimes it's better to stop, let your body recover, because the last thing you want to do is potentially push through, make the injury worse, just to then realize, you know what, if I would have stopped, I would have missed 2 weeks. But I kept going, and now I got to miss 2 months, 3 months. So sometimes, and people know, your body more than anyone else does. Listen to your body. But yeah, if you're able to push through 100%, stop whining, get back in there. But sometimes it is wise to just stop where you are, sort of lick up your wounds, heal up, and get back out there, then make the problem worse. Guys,
if it's practice, it doesn't matter. Absolutely. I'm just giving up and walking off.
100%.
But you know what's so crazy? Because this is really timely that you asked this question. Think about how many players retired. Osaka just retired in the finals. And she retired. Opelka retired in the finals. So many players. Grigor retired in the semifinals. And it looked like they could keep going, but they didn't, because the Australian Open's coming up.
Because they're weak.
And they are thinking, no, but as you said, they're thinking long term, and
100%.
that must be so difficult.
100%.
Finals or semifinals to give up.
Because a lot of people forget that these tournaments, a term that's used for these tournaments, they're called warm-up tournaments. So a lot of players will use them as a warm-up to then go play the big tournament, which is usually the Grand Slam or the thousands. And so for them, again, it's tough mentally. You're in the finals, semifinals, but your eye on the prize. Your goal is the Grand Slam. And so for you, it's better to sort of take your losses and then realize, hey, in 2 weeks, in a week, I got to play this big tournament and I got to be well rested. And for that tournament, I'll push through. Great. Guys, it's awesome. I got to go take my kids for some ice cream. I promised them. So, Grant, as always, pleasure chatting. Training is done.
That's the pod.